by today. I'm just basically going to start from the bottom of the rocket and move up to the top of the rocket in terms of the build. So basically, you've got your first stage S1C, you got S1C, S2 interstage, second stage, third stage, IU, land, service module, command module, the launch escape system. And these are some of the, excuse me, and these are some of the sources that I use down here at the bottom. And I've got some miscellaneous photos if we have the time for it today. So this is how it all started. I just basically bought an 8-inch launch tube from Apogee, and I just squared it up. Okay, squared it up and marked it. And, squared it up and marked it. So that the top of the rocket is the -Z or position 1 for those of you, or 12 o'clock, however you want to look at the world. So the entire rocket is aligned at 12 o'clock with the guys in the front upright in their seats and the rocket following behind. So this is the base, big thick 0.04 plastic that I cut, and then I started putting in structure based upon the drawings that I had from Dave Weeks. I further created a cruciform pattern with the beams that were in the original Saturn V to scale at 1/48 and started creating this thrust structure. This is the base of the Saturn V, and this is how the thrust structure was constructed. This is a completed thrust structure. This is a yellow green zinc chromate. I've seen photographs with green zinc chromate for the early launches like 4 and 6, and then there's the yellow green zinc chromate. Most of the ones that I've looked at were yellow, so I went ahead and used the yellow. There's nothing wrong with it. If you went green, you'd be right also. So, and then you see the cutouts in the bottom. That's where engine. That would be where the engine comes through on the base, which I left off one of the engines. I'll show you that a little bit later. But that's the big structure that the engines thrusted up against, and that the rocket sat down on top of. So it's a huge steel structure. These are the F1, not a good shot there, but these are the F1 engines. I bought these engines, I bought one engine and I batted it. You know, I created my own bats on it so it would look more realistic. And I put pins on it. I had photographs of the batting of the F1 engines from some Huntsville shots. And I also put in plates on the interior of the engines. The engines are built with a series of plates around them on the inside of the fin. A lot of the rocket engines, particularly F1s, they're not correctly made, so I just accurized it. Just one of the things that I do. You can see the thrust structure to the right. You can see the two umbilical connects, and there are two umbilical connects on the opposite side. That's the little silver squares right there. I left an engine off, as you can see, and then inside you can see some of the turbo pump assemblies. Here's the turbo pumps on top of the base that you just saw. That's the bottom of the bottom tank. That would have been a fuel tank or a hydrogen tank. Because you'll see a lot of tanks throughout my presentation, I'll just kind of give you a general location of where those are. But basically, these are models of turbo pumps. I did get a picture of actual turbo pumps. There's like one photograph on the web that I found. And I have a lot of places that I've looked, and they're just hard to find. And there were guys crawling around in there. It was pretty neat. There's your turbo pumps. You see my thrust structure. I'm pushing it into that spiral wound tube that I cut a slot through. And that's how you build it. It's kind of a ship in a bottle type approach to things. And basically, you have a long tube, and you stuff things in the left, you stuff things into the right to get into the center, and you start building out from both ends. After you do it, it works well. Figuring it out took a lot of time, but it does work well. So that's how I put it all together. Yes, things cracked and broke as you put it together, but you just put them back in and go from there. Also remember that if you look at the bottom end of those lines and those turbo pumps, they're not connected because you're not going to see them anyway because the frame covers it up. So a lot of stuff is covered up, so don't worry about whether or not they're connected. Okay, so they stay firm and in place as I put the thing together. I would buy light fixtures, plastic light fixtures. I put them in my vacuum form machine, and then I put my O1 styrene, my O2 styrene, and I would just pressure mold these. And in reality, the tank tops and bottoms were ellipsoids and all kinds of different, they've got shapes to them. They're not exact spheres. So what I would do is I would take something that was a hemisphere, and I would just cut the top off the hemisphere. So I had a pseudo ellipsoid. It's not a true ellipse, but it's good enough. The little tick marks up there, those were used, and there's a lot of photographs of them. They would put wooden ladders up on top, and they would just rope themselves up to get on top of the tank to work on it. Welding, rivets, all kinds of things that they would do. And then of course it was covered with an insulation cover. In the first stage it would have been yellow like this. So this is the same color, if you are close to the space shuttle. So it's an insulation layer that you see on the shuttle tanks. And if they were to leave this out long enough, it would turn colors, just like on the shuttle. But this is I got a photograph, and I matched it with my colors, and this is the ugliest yellow I could find. And so there you have it. And each one of the, like an orange, each one of those segments, I call them gores, G-O-R-Es, and many of those were made by the use of explosives underwater. It's a very odd way of doing things, but they would have a form, they would have a steel plate, they would ignite an explosive above a water tank, and the water pressure would evenly distribute the load until they got the form perfectly. I didn't do mine that way. Anyway, so this is kind of cool. You don't see much of this. This is from Dave's drawings. That would be the inside of the LOX tank on the first stage, looking inside of it if you were to poke inside. That would be where the feed lines from the LOX tank would run down to the fuel tank. You see my spiral tube kind of dirty there. This is going to be hard to describe, but basically it goes like this, like the ship in the bottle. Those liners, I would cut a slice out of my tube, and I would line it with a .01 plastic on the inside. And the plastic would kind of stay in. I just tape it in place, not glue it. And then I would start building those forms in it, because I could see it and get to it. I could reach it on both sides. Once I was done, I would slide it out, stick it into the end of the tube in place. And when I got through, I'd paint it. Otherwise, you'd have to be very, very small to build this. So that's how that went. And so this one right here was done that way. This is the fuel tank. Okay, so this is looking down on the first stage on that piece that was built. You start to see how some of those forms come together. The odd-looking corrugated forms in there, I built them in the same way. I built little sections of it in my vacuum form machine. I made a form, and I just sat there and I made 100 of them one day. It only took hours. But I finally got enough, and then I created those sections in a tube, and they weren't glued, wasn't glued together. Pull it out and put it in here. Here's my vacuum form, and there's the sections, the segments.
I was thinking you had a really cool vacuum form machine. Oh my God, it's you did all that vacuum forming on a Mattel?
No.
It's like a Mattel vacuum.
We're not there yet. I'll show you my vacuum.
All right.
I think I better have a vacuum. This is the fin trap. I didn't bring that. I didn't install this. This is an extra leftover. This is the one that I took off the front. But this is how they would look inside. Maybe someday I'll turn this into a model in and of itself, because there's actual retro rockets that sit inside this, which I don't show on my model, just there was no effective way to do it. Moving up, this is the interstage. Basically, lined it with .01, lined the outside with .01. You have to be careful. You get one shot at it to make it nice and smooth and neat. And then ringed it inside with a lot of structural members, as you see there. On the outside would be stringers, on the inside would be call turned or, full round, frames, okay? And I would punch holes in the frames, and you can see that better in the model outside. So that's the inner stage. Moving up the rocket, well, there's a painted, that's when I started painting. If you look, I created a little lip at the top of the inner stage, all the way around. And in the rocket, you see it's a reddish color around the rim. That is a detonation cord, and that's how the rocket would break apart. Some of this was welded together, permanently welded together, and the det cord and all that was welded as a separate piece. And I can show you outside a little bit more effectively than in here. But and it was welded on the pad, and it was ready to detonate once they launched it. This is the kind of form that I would make to create various forms. This is the stage 2 forward that would go to the S4B. This right here is the second stage. This was quite an effort right here. So I built a frame, and I got all my positions and 3 marks on it. And then I just started building frame from there. Again, I used Dave's plans, and it worked out pretty well. There's the frame being filled in. I put on stringers all the way around. Stringers they scared the heck out of me at first, and then I started doing them. And I realized that there's not going to be anybody out there that's going to count them. Go build a Saturn V. And then outside of that, I found that when you think about it, all you got to do, you find your north, south, east, west. Your 90 degree points, and you put a stringer on. Make sure they're accurate, they're close. Then you find the midpoint.
Yeah.
Then you do it there.
So
And you're taking tester's glue, which is a fine liquid glue. Okay, just touch it, and it's permanent. Make sure it's straight. It's permanent. And then you bisect it again, and then you bisect it again, and you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you work your way around, and then when you get through, they're concentric. They're spaced correctly. Are they on center correctly? Who knows? I don't know. But you get very, very close, and visually, it's accurate. So that's how I did it. But I did do a count, and I'm plus or minus 5 stringers. This is the inside. The only thing I had for this was a graphic that I found, a NASA graphic. And so I built these funny little forms and shapes that I thought I would be able to see, which you can, on my finished rocket. There are no photographs I've ever found of this, but yes.
So I assume the conical surface is just sheet styrene?
It is, it's 0.1.
Did you like pre-curve it at all, or just use the right thickness?
Good question. I purchased a whole bunch of 0.01 in big 4x8 sheets, but they come coiled or rolled. By the way, that's the way to buy plastic if you're building models, because it's cheap. So once you unroll those things, they have permanent curvature. So that's to your benefit. So for me, because it was so cheap and because it was pre-curved, I cut out big old 2 foot by 2 foot and make sure, 1 foot by 1 foot. We'll wrap it around this thing. I'd have extra hanging over, and it looked ugly and everything. And you just trim it.
Sure.
And
So it had some curve to begin with.
It had curve to begin with, and it laid on quite well. Where it comes on the opposite side and connects, you gotta do some magic there. And the way that I do that is I put that on the bottom. This is just a sample of one of the interior sleeves that I was talking about, where I build it inside of a tube. It's not glued, it's just taped. And I put little liners on it and such and so on, like you see there. This is the forward S2, where it connects to the S4B. This is, pardon me, this is where you see a lot of the films looking up, where the S2, obviously the S4B is pulling away. And a lot of these are actually it's the S4B, the original. II stage, not the Saturn V. But anyway, someone asked me, well, why didn't you put the cameras on there? Well, they were only used on 4 and 6, and they used once or twice again, but they lost them, and they didn't need them anymore because the stage is staged properly, so they weren't concerned with it. Here you go, with all the stringers on it, and then little bits and tidbits on it. Frames for the 4 engines, 5 engines, one in the center. And there you go. So I built a box at 90 degrees and 90 degrees, and that's 90 up top. I laid my rocket in my second stage in it, and moved it forward to the end and marked it. So I had a complete concentric line of the engine with the rocket. So is it square? Good as it's gonna get. So that's the center engine, and then I built the other ones around it. I flipped it up like that and just started putting them on top. An odd shot, but that looks down through the second stage fuel tank with all the detail in it, down through the thrust structure, and you can kind of see the engines in the far back side of that. Oops. Am I going the wrong way? Okay. Here's the front of the S2 before I put the conical shape on it. And most of the S2 was white, from what I can tell. Lots and lots of pictures I poured through. Museum pictures, pre-flight pictures. It was painted white. It was a real thin white paint coat because they were trying to keep the weight down, I'm assuming. It was ugly. All the colors on the inside of the rocket were purely, functional. They had no other, maybe keep rust down a little. They didn't want to put a lot of weight on it. So I called them ugly. They were all ugly colors. Here's how I did it. You see cones and light fixtures and tubes, and kind of gives you a picture of how I did things. The forward part of the S4B, you see where that center cone with the X's on it, that was where the lunar module sat, and that's how I rolled that. That's the S4B. We're moving up the rocket. It was a cone on top of a sphere, and actually the ground crew could access the inside of that cone. This is the painted cone with all the bits on it. There were structural upside down T's on the cone, and it was hollow, and you can see the door on it, kind of in the center right. There was a door there. There's a door on the other side as well. And then all the engine mounts, fixture mounts, I put those on there too, right off the drawings. Painted it. On the Saturn V, if you can imagine, you see the bottom of the green line, a lot of the wires and instrumentation lines actually went under it. So they look like they abruptly stop, but they don't. If you look at if you study the rocket, like at JSC, you'll see those lines go under it because it's hollow inside. So here was the tough part. I waited a long time to build a Saturn V because I never had a good J2 engine. There was a lot of shapeless blobs out there that they called J2 engines, but I never liked them. I got a guy, I drew up a J2 with a real tight knife edge on it, and I had a guy that did a 3D print for me. He just made one of them. I tried to get him to do the upper part with all of the lines, the liquid oxygen lines and so forth, but he thought that was too complicated, so I had him do one of these, and then I got it, and it was just perfect, and I bought a bunch of them. So those are my J2s. So I built this little structure. I used, when you get down into details like this, you kind of have to fake it. So I made decals for those rings. So unless I told you, and unless you look close, you wouldn't know. So that's kind of how I did it. The red thing in the middle, that was kind of a gasketed, it's a heat temperature gasket, for the engine to sit on. In the back, you see a little bit of red on the back. That was jacketed. That had a fireproof jacket. And so then I placed those on top of my new nozzles. And there you go. That's the family right there. You got 5 of them coming, just like SpaceX, building rocket engines. So this is the inside of ES4B. We're on the 3rd stage, and I took a lot of pictures down at JSC on the inside of that, and the structure that you see and those forms and things. I'm pretty darn close to what I saw down there. There's no drawings out there, and Dave Weeks stopped at that point. He didn't do any more. So I was able to get some good shots, and the frames are fairly accurate. The work at the bottom, that was hard to do. Here's some more pictures that I did. A lot of this gets hidden. That's the inside of the fuel tank of the S4B. Not a good picture, but the reason I showed that was, well, this one's better. Okay, you see the alligator scales inside. So the way I did that is I took a .01 sheet, put it on my drafting table. I cut up about 100 pieces of squares from sprue. I laid it out north, south, east, west, vertical, 90-degree angles, and I started moving my my protractor, my angle across, and started gluing them on, just touching them on like this. They were all square, they were all true, and I took it, flipped it 45, and cut it. And so now you have diamonds. And those are stuck inside. They actually glued it in quite well. They went really. The diameter of the tube is getting smaller, the rocket's getting smaller, and it's a little easier to handle. The spheres on the inside are helium spheres, the pressurization spheres, and the ones on the left, on the bottom, are also helium spheres. They ran instrumentation. A lot of you guys might know a little more about this. I think someone asked about the turbo pumps. I think they actually start with the turbo pumps, but I'm not certain on that. But someone might know. Might just be pressure from the locks or pressure from the fuel that starts the turbo pumps. There you go. Took a long time to do. You don't sit down and do these. It's an hour here, and then 2 weeks later another hour, and a month later another hour. There's the fuel tank completed. The top, the reason I show this is because the top is the common dome. So you've got fuel, hydrogen inside this tank, and then locks outside, on the top side of the tank. Very few pictures of this. I felt like I got fairly close to it. It's blanket looking, okay? And it's in orange slice segments. It's got one color and another color and another color. I've got some pictures of the Smithsonian, but it's just a little cutout. So colors I'm close on. I've got a couple of pictures like this, and it's as good as I could get. And it looks blankety. I don't know how to describe it. It's like a pool, like a swimming pool, for kids. It's like a big plastic gasket over the top of it. So that's all it's the best way I can describe it. We're looking down on the top of the tank of the S4B, and the gold ring, that's your instrumentation unit, and the instrumentation unit was covered in gold foil all the way around, or gold cover, because that was basically an air conditioner. Okay, so your instruments were inside, so it kept them cool as they went up. And that's also where the legs would seat.
Did you buy orange foil or did you paint it?
I bought orange foil. I use the kind that you find in those space blankets. And I do something that most people don't. And that is I spray paint my gold foil flat. Because it looks better to me. And number one, your gold foil is not going to be that gold. and that flashy at that scale. Some might, but I would challenge, you know, you to show me the difference, because here we go, you know, on orbit pictures, no atmosphere and colors, and it gets crazy. So you just make a determination. And I chose, because it's hidden, tucked inside the rocket, that I wanted someone to see a hint of gold, but I didn't want that flashy look, because it looked like I screwed it up, or someone didn't, it just doesn't look right to me, to the eye. So that's just an artistic taste, a part of mine, on the way that I approach these. That's just a view. If the lunar module was not in there, the leg of the lunar module would seat right down here in the bottom. If it were not in there, that's what the S4B would look like. It's all painted, and the gold is in there. I had not spray painted the gold at that point. See how flashy it kind of messes up the stuff. Okay, I built this, I built two of these. I'm covering it now. That's the instrumentation unit. It's upside down. There's the other one I built. The one on the right is a wireframe. The one on the left is more just structural pieces, because I'm covering it up. The one on the right I've got at home, and I've already put instrumentation pieces in it. I may build it someday, I don't know. There's the bottom of the limb. This is a 3D print, but since it's not Apollo 17, I had to add a whole bunch of stuff to it. Because Apollo 17 had extra batteries, the battery pack on the right you see there. On the left top, you see where it's cut out? That's where the rover would fit. A lot of little pieces on it. I had to cut off a lot of the legs, because Apollo 11 and Apollo 17 and the long duration flights had different legs that were shaped differently. So I cut those off. So I had to do a lot of work to this. There's the top of it. Apollo 17 had the two pieces, they're like frames that they would put on the rover, or pull off and put on the rover. And that's what those are in the bottom left-hand corner. Batteries up on the left. There it is, upside down. You see the discoloration on the descent rocket, descent engine. The band right there on Apollo 17, it was a foot longer than the other flights. And the reason is when they landed, it was a heavier rocket, it was a heavier lunar module, long duration. When it landed and they cut off the engines, there was the chance that that longer engine might plunge into the lunar surface, thus shoving the engine up into the second stage that the guys were in. So they built this extension, and it's collapsible. And there's a photograph of it collapsed on Apollo 15, if you look at the pictures. It worked. I like the limb to be shiny. So there you go, I've changed my mind. There's the top. Unfortunately, you don't see much of it. I'm getting you an inside show here. Stuff is all tucked away. That's the rover bay on the right. That's the bottom of the rover. I built that rover at for the Las Vegas, that Apollo 17 lunar module. It was deployed or partially deployed. Okay, there's the bottom of the lunar module, getting ready to be glued on to the S4B, never to be seen again. But I did a complete lunar module, showing you the pictures. It has rivets on the bottom, that's a nickel plate. It has all kinds of weird stuff on it. The landing pins are tucked up underneath the leg. You know, they come out when they land. And you see the radar, and so forth. Okay, there's the first stage, the bottom stage of the limb, placed inside of the S4B frame. See how it fit? It worked out real well. And that's the Apollo 17 cruciform configuration. That's out of there's a series of drawings out there that shows you the tops of these limbs were different from mission to mission, just like some of the exteriors. That's if you were in the limb looking up, or from the S4B looking up, that's what you'd see before I painted it. The limb adapter. Just some fit ups here prior to finishing. I did a lot of this where I created these oddball forms, and I would make doors and I would make access points and things that were shaped to the cones and the half spheres, and it got crazy after a while, just odd shapes all over the rocket. Vacuum form to make the parts for these. And there it is. I think I got it for
Little red back.
40 bucks or something. It worked. There's something wrong with the electric heater, but I made it work. Just hit it.
It's really cool, it really sucks.
Yeah. And so, do I go out and I just make a form? No. I make 20, 30, 40, just to make sure I get them right. And sometimes I'll cut a piece off here, put it on there, and so forth and so on. There is one of the doors from the limb bay there. That's one of the doors that come off. I made that in the vacuum form.
Nice.
All I do is I just make the form, and then I put sheet styrene on it, you know, to put the stringers and things on it. There it is, tucked away, just fit. Explain this to you if I can. There's a tray here, and up top that goes the length of the door. The way that I understand it is that there's a detonation cord that lays in that tray. 4 trays, 4 doors, 4 trays. So as it opens up, they ignite the deck cord. It opens the door slightly, and down here there's a pin there, and there's a pin there inside that little bump out, and there's like a little shock absorber, and it just pushes the door out. And all it's doing is they blow it, and it just shoves it out like that slowly. And then they go away from the rocket.
Yeah, that's unique to the ones that carry the limb, because they kept the doors attached on the ones that were North Orbit.
That's correct. So a lot of pictures you'll see, it's sprung open, but they're still attached to the adapter. So you're right, that was the unmanned generally. Then furthermore, there were some more things I wanted to show that I really couldn't. Right there, you see the little grabber, the little attach? That locks down on the end of the lunar module leg, the structural part of the leg, okay? And so basically, little alligator, they blow it with a pyro of some type. It opens up, and you see the springs, it has springs. So the springs open up, and that releases the limb, so they can pull it out. There is it's similar to the other two, where you have a shock absorber effect. It's similar, and it pushes it out slightly too. It's straight up. Okay, there it is. There's the instrumentation unit. I've sprayed it. It's not as shiny. I like it.
It's perfect. It looks good.
This is my little side venture. So inside the door, there was on the top, and you can see it on my rocket outside, there's a door. It was an access hatch, and it allowed you to get inside. And I went down to Johnson and I took a bunch of photographs, and I found a bunch of little T's sticking out of the inside of these doors, as well as I found a number or two. And you gotta really look close. I wish I brought the photo, but I didn't. I replicated that effect here, and they would come in and they would attach these scaffolds on the inside, so that they could access the limb while it was on the pad.
Okay,
In
so
one
those
case-
are little work site platforms that
Yes.
they stick inside.
Yeah, and there were several layers, and there were stairs, and I talked to a guy at the 19 Nats, who actually climbed in there, and he worked on the line, and he says, yeah, that's what we did. So I made this just because it seemed appropriate. You see the dead cord line, you see electrical lines going up to the service module and command module. How am I doing on time? Am I okay?
Got about 9 minutes.
Hey, right on time.
Yeah.
Just about. Gotta cover the command service module. There we go.
Here's what I rarely see done on the service module. There is a splinter pattern of layers on the service module, and those are cork, and they benefit. It was a heat issue when they were in the upper atmosphere. There was a thermal and heat friction issue, and also the thrusters would fire, and they would provide a little bit of protection. So I put those splinters on my service module. I stripped the entire, I think that's a dragon. This is my favorite part, which got hidden away, and I'm so unhappy about it. But this is the center core to the service module. This is where the engine sat.
That's the primary
And
structure.
there's my engine. So I did good on that engine. You can't see it, but of my whole rocket, I'm really proud of that. It's 1 inch wide, it just tucks right in. And it fits inside that tube. There you go. Helium tank at the top, wires, lines, et cetera, et cetera. Photographs show that those were blue electric lines, pneumatic lines, so I put those in. Anyway, I thought it came together well. And it kind of fit in like you see there. These are just fit up pictures. This is the top of the service module. I copied a lot of detail from photographs, some that I took at the JSC when they renovated it, and some that were online. There are thermal blankets up there, there's instrumentation, there's a lot of wires and lines and instrumentation lines and so forth and so on. I couldn't show all of it, it gets crazy, but see the image up top? See how nuts it gets? But those are mine, and I had two. Like maybe I have more. And then I put some wires in to just kind of give it a sense of where some of the major lines are. If you start getting into other lines in these spaces, when you replicate them, they're like 0.005 in diameter. It gets to the point where you can't work with it, you can't see it when you build it. So I just kind of stop at a certain point. It's pretty close, pretty true. What I want to point out on this picture, there are three. These are the pads where the command module sat, and the bottom there's a bolt. There's a bolt, and on the top of that they had a cutter and would cut the bolt. The bolt went all the way up through the command module heat shield. I didn't know this until a month back because I thought it would burn through on reentry, but it just cuts the bolt off. The bolt is there. You can see it at some.
So
of
the head of the
museums.
bolt was still in the heat shield.
Yeah, you'll see it. Look at some of the museums and look at some of the heat shields, and you'll see there's a photograph of one of the bolts sticking out.
Interesting.
Now I don't know if that was a reentry from Earth orbit or back from space, which is a faster reentry, but you know it's one of those.
Somebody did the thermal analysis and determined it would survive, so.
Some people will buy parts like this, 3D printed. I do not. I just build them. That's the instrument bay for Apollo 17. And that's where I put it. And then I built my own instruments, put them in, filled it out, so forth and so on. That's where their feet would go. See the little place right here? That's where he'd be sideways with his boots in. And there's a little arm that he tracks down. That's when they're changing out film reels and things like that. There's a lot of instrumentation. Okay, I experimented with the service module engine. I was never satisfied with images and pictures or models that I'd seen, so I just played with colors and metallics, and this is just playing around. Okay, this picture shows the Yagi antenna in the center, and it shows the two left and right antennas that were used in orbit. On my model outside, they would be, scale-wise, they'd be twice that long. But I cut them off because they would have extended slow, and it's presumably how it would look. See, you can see my cameras, thrusters, and also don't forget that the service module had position lights on it. It had red and green, just like an aircraft. red, and I have them on my kit outside, you can see them. I don't have good pictures here. Red and green, and I think there's some ambers and there's some whites, but there's a whole. Okay, this was fun. So I built this, just get this a better picture. There we go. I built a tub, okay? And so in the tub, I put parts that I got from the 3D images of the inside of Apollo 11 of the Smithsonian, which is available online. So I looked at them and I just replicated the forms and shapes that were under the couches. Didn't know what I was going to see once I finished, so I wanted to see everything. And I put some decals on. That's a 3D print part, but I also added, which you cannot see here, it's on the build. I put there's hydraulic lines on it too.
Oh, jeez.
And by the way, you can't see it well, but one of the struts is painted white so that they would know it goes here. Otherwise, think about it, you're in orbit upside down in space. Which way does this thing go? And it's white to white and everything else matches.
So they color code.
They color coded it. That's the inside of the capsule with a hatch. I don't remember using this particular one. I made a bunch of them. But there's, this is one of my favorite parts. I started out with a half of a seat, which someone 3D printed, and it was fairly accurate. And so from that, I just replicated it across and built the rest of it. It's not that difficult once you have something to start with.
At least it's a repeated pattern.
It's a repeating pattern. And then the seats, which actually were leather and look like leather, I made those with tape. I put tape down on a piece of styrene, just lightly, cut them out, lift them up, put them on. It's just like it's a perfect fit, and it sticks. Then you paint them, and they look like leather. There you go. I got the lines coming down. They're oxygen lines. They're communication lines. Struts. Buttons on the leather of the seats. And the feet rests. And then,
Oh my God.
this. The piece on the left is an experimentation. There's a guy that makes super miniature nuts, bolts, switches, toggles, and stuff like that. So I just tried it, and I stuck it kind of in the capsule where there was supposed to be something there, but you can see it kind of inside, if you look inside. And then I painted and decaled the command module. What do you call it? That's what the driver says.
CMP station.
Yeah, CMP station. And see the little brown things on the wall? If you look at the Smithsonian, you can challenge me on this, but I believe they were all over the command module, and they're
Velcro in it.
Velcro.
Velcro spots.
Yeah, and they would just put everything on. So no, those are not mistakes on the inside of my command module. Those are Velcro spots. Okay, so parachute compartment up top, I built that by hand. Vacuum form part of it. The foil, the trick with foil that I would suggest is that at these scales, 48 and then maybe smaller, crinkled foil batting and things like that are going to have a texture that's tighter than just taking your foil and scrunching it up and put it on. You scrunch it up, open it, and keep scrunching it and opening it until you get a pattern which is to scale, which is more natural to that scale. And so that's what the inside structure would look like. The tub was some type of a polymer. Someone might know what it was, but it's that rusty brown look.
Bakelite, maybe?
Bakelite was earlier in history. Was it not? It could have been something similar.
Something based on bakelite.
So this started out, I did buy a 3D print shell. But I cut it all up and threw it away and do mine. So what I have here on the right is the barrel off of the Rebel kit. Okay, just the barrel. So I put the proper lines at the proper location and proper bolts and so forth on the structure, and it's different. You'll see it's different from the Rebel kit. And then I also put you see these little bolts and it's like little feet locations on the structure there. I found those at JSC, and whether they were used for accessing this as a display or whether it was on the original rocket, I don't know. But I went ahead and put them on there. And my wiring, you'll see that there's wiring that runs down. There's a big bus. See where the engine nozzles are? There's a big bus, it's a round bus that you never see on models. You can see it on mine, it's a half-minute bus under there where the power would come down. And there were pyros, of course, where the legs came inside and connected to the command module. I used Sternbox decals, but I call them Dave Weeks decals because every one of them must be Dave Weeks' work. But they're pretty good decals. You can read them. And so I put them like in those blowout holes there where the thrusters would fire. The thrusters could fire, you know, if that jacket was still on top. And so that was made available for them. That's my understanding. So here's my custom inside of a launch escape system. Negative of a positive, okay? If you can kind of get your hands around that. There would be high points on the CM, and so those would have to be the low points here. So imagine mapping it, you know, getting it right. That was cork. It is my understanding from what I've read that was cork, and there's a couple of photographs. It's a dark brown photo, maybe rusty to brown, a picture or two of it. And so I built this. Oh, there's the front of it. I customized that too. Well, I don't have it, but anyway, I painted it that kind of a cork color, and you can see it outside. There it is, and there's the other view. I have it all stacked, pushed together. See the boards are pushed together. Okay.
Start to finish, how many months?
Well, it was a 2-year project, so, but we've done other things besides this. We do travel and we have other interests and things that we've been pretty busy with, so it's not, you know, now, the last 2 months has been, it's kind of like wrestling an alligator, you know, you're gonna fix one thing and you break 2 other things. And it got to a point where I just said, well, I gotta finish this thing. So I mounted it and did the best I could, just make it clean. You know, there's some oopsies in there, but, you know, it's
All
not.
you know about it.
Well, for the most part, true. Let's see, what else is there that you might not see outside? There are the retro rockets that go in the fin area. I didn't do because I pulled that off the front so you could see, you know, inside.
Didn't they take those? Didn't they not use those on 15 through 17?
I don't know because you know I'm on the orbital shots where the first stage falls away. I've never seen them look like they've been obliterated, like they had fired. You know what I mean? I think you're right. I think you're right.
Yeah, because on 15, when the S2 fired, it actually impinged on the upper dome of stage 1. And they had to do some other tweaks to make sure that they separated out, because they said, okay, it worked a little better, so they deleted several of the retro rockets
Right.
on spots.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would not argue.
Yeah.
That's probably right. Questions? I'm going to be around, so you can ask